What's up, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. JR Santos Diaz here, and I'm a startup founder and previously worked at Google and a Google-backed startup. Before you take a leap forward and approach a business, you need to make sure that you can quantify how big the market is. Whether if you're putting this in a pitch deck or if you're just trying to see and justify if this is actually worth your time. So you may have heard a lot of acronyms, let's say SAM, SOM, TAM, and also different approaches from top down to bottom up. And so for this video, we'll talk about what approaches make the most sense in taking this with your business, and in addition, which acronyms that you should actually care about and really understand, so when you approach this with investors, as you think about how you build your business, you'll actually know what are the most meaningful aspects to really show and highlight what you're building in the most meaningful ways. So let's get started. What does TAM mean? Total Addressable Market. And this is essentially 100% of the market if you were to get every single customer. So if you're thinking about what is the aspect that really means the most and what is the most meaningful, yes, you can also calculate, let's say, the SAM, which is your serviceable, which is actually only a subset of those customers. So let's say if you're trying to approach a smaller portion where, let's say, English is only available, that will be your SAM. And then if you take even a smaller portion of the SOM, this is going to be your Serviceable Obtainable Market. And so if we just take all that and really think about from if it's worthwhile to take a top down to bottom up, frankly, the bottom up approach is the best way to move forward. A lot of people say that taking a top down approach is the lazy way. So, for example, what does this mean? Let's say if you're playing in the software business for DevOps, it's a 50 billion market, you're a company, and say you can tackle, let's say, 15% of it. So, again, that's maybe one way to approach it, but frankly, it's the lazy way, and I actually believe that as well. So if we're thinking about what is the best approach, you're going to want to take a bottom up. And so what that means is you're going to take the different customer profiles within the industry, and then you're going to multiply that by how much you actually think you can get annually. And so that will equal the total addressable. And then when you think about your SAM and SOM, you're taking those subset of what actually makes sense. So let's actually go to a spreadsheet that I helped make so you can actually use this and apply this to your business. So let's go to the spreadsheet. So looking at this spreadsheet, you can actually make a copy for yourself. So it's going to be easy to apply for your business. But to make this as easy as possible and for you to really digest it, I added some examples here, and we can reference this using, let's say, a software or B2B company. And so that's the reason why I use specific areas and topics. But with all that said, if we look deeply here, essentially what we have is you need to really understand what are the different customer profiles if you were to take up 100% of the entire space for your business. So, if we're looking, let's say, at a software company, there'd be two different types of customers. And so one would be customer type one as enterprises, and then the second customer would be small and medium-sized businesses, right? So those are the two customer types that take up 100% of the space. And if we actually look at the different columns and rows, if we look at the rows, we have to understand the number of total customers. We have to understand the annual customer revenue coming from those customers. And then also, again, what is that total for 100% of that in terms of penetration? So in this example, we have, let's say, a total of 5,000 enterprises within this space that make up the total addressable market. Each of those customers on average will bring in $200,000. So in total, for 100% of that entire market for enterprises, that will equal $1 billion in the market. If we then move on to the second customer profile, in terms of the small and medium-sized businesses or SMBs, there's going to be 1 million here in the space. Each of those businesses are going to bring $10,000, and then that yields $10 billion in market cap. So essentially, we then move over into what does that equal in total, and the total number for total addressable market, that's going to be $11 billion, right? So that's kind of on the bigger side. If we look then at the serviceable addressable market, so this here specifically is going to be a subset. So if, for example, we're looking at businesses that only focus on English, that don't need multi-languages as an example, in the enterprise space, that's going to be a subset of those customers, so 20% specifically. So 1,000 different enterprises for total customers. That will equal about still the number of the annual average of 200,000, which yields a 200 million total for the market penetration. And then in addition to that, if we look at the customer type for SMBs, that's going to be half, right? So this is just an example. These aren't real numbers, but it'll be a $500,000, $10,000 for the annual customer revenue, and that yields your $5 billion, which eventually is going to be the $5.2 billion for your serviceable addressable market. And then lastly, looking at what's obtainable. And so this is your most immediate place in the market for you to add immediate value. So right now, as a startup, let's say as an example, you can't approach enterprises because you don't have the resources. So we actually will move that addressable to 0, which yields $0 in market penetration. And then if we go to the SMBs, we can only tackle a fourth of the total addressable. So we take 250,000 times 10,000, which is the average annually. And so that yields a $2.5 billion obtainable market. So that in a nutshell is kind of how you look and tackle your TAM, SAM, and SOM. You know, some people would all you need is the TAM to really get and move forward, but I like to make sure that it really adds kind of the strategy behind how you think about your space to tackle it. So I'm also going to include a different template here that you're going to be able to use on Google Slides. So if you're using, let's say, a presentation or pitch deck, you'll be able to use this pie. So as we said in that previous example, our total addressable market is 11 billion. So that makes up 100% of the pie, as you can see here. Then we go in and take a subset of those customers. So again, that's going to be the 5.2 billion. And then lastly, the most immediate obtainable part of that market will yield a 2.5 billion here. So again, feel free to make a copy, use this for your own pitch decks. But this is what's going to allow investors really understand and for you to quantify how big of a market this is. And so again, if you're raising venture capital, typically what firms want is really they're looking at your team, they're looking at your problem statement, and they also how big of a market it actually is in addition to your solution. So if they're looking to 100x their investment, you're gonna have to play in a very, very large market, as we talked about in our last video for product market fit. This is going to allow you to really be successful. So again, use these resources. This is something that I had to learn the hard way, but easy, and luckily for you, I'm going to make sure that I can consolidate it and give this to you so it makes it easy for you to really embark on your journey as an entrepreneur. So let's recap. So to recap, we talked about your total addressable market and understanding how to quantify this approach. Again, you're going to want to take a bottom-up approach to really fully understand how do you get to this large market. So if you have questions, if you want to look at different topics in the future, feel free to comment below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Looking forward, guys. Talk soon. Take care.